So back in the days before the gluttonous eldritch horror we know as the Disney Corporation started relentlessly consuming every studio it could get its mouse-shaped tentacles on, there was a little old studio called 20th Century Fox. And before your Iron Mans and Mighty Thors, there was a little superhero franchise you may have heard of that was pretty popular: X-Men. While other Marvel properties Fox had bought up from Marvel didn't really go anywhere, like Daredevil and the Fantastic Four, X-Men was a damn juggernaut, pun intended, of a franchise. Fox pumped out 13 movies, all based on this merry mutant universe, though of varying quality and questionable continuity. Well, that's all over now. Fox is dead. But the legacy of their versions of the X-Men will either live on in the multiverse of the MCU, or will be soullessly hollowed out and a skin suit version will be desperately puppeted in front of you to prop up the MCU's dying universe, depending on your personal point of view on these things. Now, across those 13 movies, Fox adapted a lot, and I mean a lot, of mutants, some of which were actually fairly accurately adapted, despite the obvious lack of costumes, while some were really not. So while popular X-Men heroes who were adapted pretty dang well from the comics into the movies have already appeared in the MCU in a different form, with more promising to come, let's take a look in the other direction, at heroes who were not adapted well from the Marvel comic source material into the Fox X-Men universe. How do we judge how well or poorly these heroes have been adapted? Well, it'll be by using my multifaceted 3Cs system, with those threes being costume, character, and continuity. Costume rates a character's outfit or costume, their overall look, and their superficial physical characteristics. Character rates their personality, their relationship with others, and their powers or abilities. And continuity rates their origin stories, their iconic moments, and their overall place in the world, universe, or timeline. And after rating every single superhero adapted into these movies, I've ranked them all from the most accurate to the absolute least, and expertly quarantined off the bottom 20 worst adapted Fox X-Men universe heroes to be viewed safely in list format. Before we start that list, disclaimer: a hero being on this list is not a commentary on if they're a good or bad character, only a commentary on how accurately or inaccurately they were adapted from the comic book source material in relation to other heroes in these movies. So, anyways, enough of that. Let's get started with the top 20 worst adapted Fox X-Men heroes. Starting our list with the 20th worst adapted is a hero who's not that poorly adapted, but is still pretty different: Siren. Teresa Cassidy was the daughter of Sean Cassidy, the mutant hero known as Banshee. Soon after her birth, her mother died and she was raised by her uncle, Black Tom Cassidy, without her father even knowing that she was still alive. A very common thing in superhero universes, actually. After gaining the mutant ability to emit a sonic scream like her father, Teresa assisted her uncle in his criminal activities for a time. Eventually, she reunites with her father and redeems herself as a hero with the mutant teams like X-Force and X-Factor, going by the name Siren. In comics, Siren is a popular and long-standing hero with a lot of arcs and relationships through various X titles. In the movies, she's that one student who screams really loud when Stryker's men are attacking the mansion in X2, X-Men United. She's then tranquilized and taken along with many other students, though later she and the others are rescued and we see her sad at the professor's funeral in the third movie. Nothing special, but honestly, as a cameo adaptation, not that bad. She's got her red hair, she does her sonic scream, we don't learn much about her beyond that, but the only major difference we can see are that she's quite a bit younger and is a student at the Xavier Institute. Now, if she was just this one cameo, she likely would be a couple spots up on the list, but there's one element in the later movies that drops her down a teeny bit, and that's her comic father Banshee actually appearing in X-Men First Class, which would be cool because we could assume he was her father, but when Days of Futures Past comes around and kills off all the characters no one gave a crap about from First Class, sadly, that did include Banshee, making it impossible for him to have had a daughter this young in the not-too-distant future of the original X-Men movies. However, as a couple of the nerdier of you are likely pointing out, Banshee's real name, Sean Cassidy, does appear on a list of suspected mutants in X2. So does that mean he faked his death? That he was brought back to life somehow? That there's another Sean Cassidy? That this includes lists of people that have been killed? Well, it doesn't mean anything. The X-Men movies don't take their own timelines or continuity seriously. They ain't taking an Easter egg as seriously as us fans do. Next at 19, we have a character I doubt many people even noticed was in the movie, and that's not just because no one bothered to watch it. Match. In comics, Match was a student at the Xavier Institute who worked alongside other students on a training squad known as the Paragons, learning under mentors like Wolfsbane and Magma. His mutation allows him to create and control fire, and his head is constantly engulfed in flame, hence the name. He has an equally fiery temper that has gotten him into trouble, but is a natural leader among his classmates. In the movies, he can control fire and is a student of the Xavier Institute, but that's pretty much it. His head is not on fire, and we learn absolutely nothing about his character. He's pretty much a background character. You can see him at the party in the woods with the other students, and if for some reason you're really paying attention instead of nodding off, you can see him starting a quick little fire, though you're never really given a good shot of him. How do we know that this random-ass kid is supposed to be Match? Well, he's named in the credits. There were only 2 new heroes named in the credits of this movie, and freaking Match was randomly one of them. And he doesn't do anything. No clue what the story here is, but whatever. Now down to 18, we've got Yukio. In the comics, Yukio is a martial arts master who works as a mercenary. When Wolverine falls in love with Mariko Yoshida, her father, Shingen Harada, hired Yukio to kill him. Though she does initially poison him, he survives, and after getting to know him, she develops feelings for Wolverine and decides to aid him instead, even if those feelings are not reciprocated. So this goes without saying, but she's not a mutant, she does not have the precognitive ability to see others' deaths, and she definitely does not dress like a badass goth anime schoolgirl. However, in The Wolverine, she is, has, and does. She is still an ally to Wolverine, though, with less of a romantic connection. She is still working for the Yoshida, but instead of being hired by Harada as an assassin, in the movie she is taken in by his grandfather after her parents die and trained as Mariko's protector. Both versions are capable martial artists and swordsmen, and both develop bonds with Wolverine during his time in Japan. Their personalities, looks, abilities, and reasons for everything they're doing are the only real differences. Next down to 17 with Darwin. In the comics, Darwin's power is to instantly evolve to survive anything. In the movies, however, he dies. Alright, now down to 16, Okay, I'll go into a little more detail on the differences than that. In the comics, Darwin is one of the mutants who develops a physical mutation in addition alongside his powers. Though he's been portrayed a few different ways, most often he's bald with abnormally large eyes, pale skin, and an unnaturally lanky build. In the movies, Darwin looks like a normal guy, enough so that he can work as a taxi driver during the not that open-minded 60s when he was recruited by Xavier and Magneto. In the comics, after his mother disowned him due to his mutant nature, he was experimented on by scientists until he was recruited by Moira McTaggart. When he and other mutants went on a mission to rescue the X-Men on the living island Krakoa, things went horribly wrong, and all of them seemingly died. Though, due to his mutation, Darwin was found to have adapted to the extreme circumstances and was recovered years later. In the movies, he is recruited into Xavier's first team of X-Men when Sebastian Shaw attempts to recruit the mutants to his evil cause. Darwin resists. Shaw places some energies he'd absorbed within Darwin, and though his body attempts to adapt to survive it, it is unsuccessful and it just blows up, tragically killing Darwin. The people writing this frickin' movie thought they were being clever by coming up with this brilliant way to kill Darwin, but they're just revealing how incredibly uncreative and stupid they are compared to comic writers. Sure, even without some of the more ridiculous adaptations, like instantly teleporting away from danger or having his entire body convert into energy to survive, we literally just watched Sebastian Shaw absorb the same energy he puts into Darwin literally a few seconds earlier. Why in the hell wouldn't his body then just adapt to absorb it in the same frickin' way Shaw does? We know it's possible in this universe. If the script needed a mutant to die here, why in the hell would you pick Darwin of all characters? Anyways, down to 16 now with Caliban. Caliban has the mutant ability to locate the presence of other mutants. He also has a physical mutation that makes him hairless with white skin and bulging yellow eyes. He was run out of his home and found by Callisto, who used his ability to track mutants to find other, usually also physically mutated outcast mutants to form the underground society known as the Morlocks. After a massacre of the Morlocks, Caliban is rescued by the mutant team X-Factor and begins to work alongside them. Though due to his weakness and life of being pushed around, he later betrays the team and agrees to serve Apocalypse in exchange for increased power, eventually serving as one of his horsemen, changing his appearance and massively increasing his physical abilities. Eventually, he was freed of Apocalypse's influences, and though the ordeal had degraded his intelligence, he began serving as a hero again alongside X-Force. Well, despite the name, in the movie X-Men Apocalypse, he is none of that. He's a black market dealer in the 80s who sells information and whereabouts on mutants. Though he does speak in the third person, as he usually does in comics, virtually nothing else about his personality is similar, with this version being a greedily and pretty classily dressed business-minded man. He is approached by Apocalypse, but instead of being recruited as one of the Horsemen, he goes and recruits the much hotter Psylock. He has a bit of a bug-eyed, creepy appearance, but nothing like his inhuman appearance in comics, and his skin is not as pale. His next appearance is in Logan, based decades later. He does now have his white skin due to a form of albinoism, though he no longer refers to himself in the third person. And though we don't learn anything about a mutant power of his in the first movie, and his ability to find mutants seems related to his vast information network, in Logan we learn that, like the comics, he does have this ability. So, between the two movies, we kinda have some similar elements, but overall he's very different. At 15 we come to Emma Frost. In the comics, Emma Frost is one of the world's most powerful telepaths and later developed the secondary mutation to turn her skin into diamond. She is an elegant and seductive woman who originally started out as a villain serving as the White Queen of the powerful and dangerous Hellfire Club. But after many harrowing events, including the destruction of the mutant island of Genosha, Emma starts using her abilities and intelligence to serve as a hero instead, joining and rising in the ranks of the X-Men, teaching the next generation of young mutants as a teacher, and eventually rising to a leadership position within the school. She's a character with a morally complex past who's undergone many trials and changes throughout the years, and due to her unique design and frigid yet heroic personality, she's become an incredibly important, fan-favorite character within the franchise. But that's all work to adapt. Let's just make her some random blonde girl who can turn to diamond. In the movies, Emma is the captured sister of Wolverine's love interest, Kayla Silverfox, and since this character is only referred to as Emma, I suppose we can assume her full name is Emma Silverfox here? However, since Silverfox in the comics and movies is Native American, that would imply that Emma is as well, or at least partially so, and, well, I mean... Oh, and while we're at it, the sister connection is completely made up for this movie. In the comics, these two characters really have no strong connection to each other. It's just randomly inserted in here. She's kidnapped alongside a bunch of other mutant kids by William Stryker, and he forces Silverfox to undergo an overly complex plot to manipulate Wolverine into joining his Weapon X project under the threat of killing Emma. After Wolverine and Kayla free the captured mutants, Kayla is killed, and Cyclops, another young captive, gets a message from Charles Xavier, which he follows, leading Emma and all the other mutants to freedom. Instead of her skin turning into one solid diamond, in the movie it looks like a million diamonds covering her body instead, which both is and looks stupid. And though in the comics her psychic abilities are her main power, and they have a frickin' telepath reaching out to the kids, there's no indication that she has any psychic abilities whatsoever. And in the comics, Emma has a haughty, arrogant, yet caring personality, while in the movies they decided to change that to no personality whatsoever. Anywho, they very quickly knew how much they screwed this popular character up, so they tried again to moderately better results, kind of, in First Class, but now, weirdly, within Fox continuity, there are two blonde female mutants named Emma with the ability to turn their skin into diamond. That's quite a coincidence. But as for that other one, since it was adapting her villainous side and is an entirely different character, she don't show up on this hero list. We'll see next time. Now down to our next hero at 14 with Richter. Unlike the one we just went through, this is one of those situations where technically it is a bad adaptation, but not in the way where it makes the character bad. YuGiOh Richter was a mutant who came from a troubled background with the ability to create seismic vibrations. He was kidnapped by an anti-mutant organization that wanted to use his abilities for their own purposes. He was freed and taken in for training by X-Factor, but eventually forms a new team alongside some of the other trainees known as the Exterminators, before going on to become part of teams like New Mutants and X-Force. In the movies, he was one of the children created through experimentation by the Alkali Transigen Group, alongside X-23. He was created with the DNA samples of Dominic Petros, a version of Dominos Petrakis, who in the comics is known as Avalanche, but in the movies we never actually saw. Why they changed his name, I really have no godly idea. When Richter and the other children are scheduled for extermination after being deemed failures, a nurse working for the project helps them escape the facility. Among the children, Richter begins taking on a leadership role. When Wolverine helps the children flee from the Reavers in X-24, Richter uses his powers to help out, and though he's injured, he survives. We never learn if he has a first name in the movies, and besides being obviously much younger and not a clone in the comics, there's another major difference. Comic Richter has the power to produce and manipulate seismic vibrations. In the movies, though, he has seismokinetic abilities instead, allowing him to move and control rocks and earth. No clue why they used him here, since he's nothing like the comic version, and none of the other kids are based on anybody, but like I said, this doesn't make for a bad character, it's just a really random choice, and all it can serve to do is piss off fans of the character. And now at 13 we come to Agent Zero. Now it's always a bit iffy to call some of these 90s Weapon X mercenary guys heroes, but Maverick/Agent Zero is one who leans much more towards anti-hero most of the time, so we'll put him here. In the comics, Christoph Nord was born in East Germany and fought against the communist regime, but after losing everything he became a mercenary before being recruited by the CNA into the Weapon X program, where he changed his name to David North and started going by the codename Maverick, working on Team X alongside other members like Wolverine and Sabretooth. During his time with the program, he received false memory implants, and his mutant ability to absorb kinetic energy was enhanced with an artificially grafted healing factor culled from Wolverine's DNA. Though willing to do dark things, he was not one to kill innocent civilians, and was unwilling to leave his teammates to die on the field, even when given specific orders to leave them behind. He formed a mutual respect with Wolverine and a dislike of Sabretooth for his violent tendencies. After the organization disbanded, he continued to work as a mercenary, but years later he was brought back into a new version of the organization and given more upgraded abilities and equipment to work for them, now becoming known as Agent Zero. And when sent on a mission to kill Wolverine, Agent Zero purposely failed the assignment, unwilling to kill a man that he had known and grown to respect for. In the movies, though, he does not go by the name Maverick during his time in Team X, instead always going by Zero, and we never learn his real name. And don't give me any of that, but he was called David Nord in the video game. That ain't canon with this movie, though it should be, because that game was way, way better. Instead of wearing his, and you may mock me for saying this, super badass yellow armor, as he did during that time in the comics, he instead just wears a boring generic combat outfit, somewhat inspired by his Agent Zero outfit later on, but not really. He does work alongside Sabretooth and Wolverine on Team X in the past, as he did in the comics, but this version is a cold-hearted assassin who has a rivalry/hatred for Wolverine, emotionlessly and needlessly gunning down innocent civilians just to piss Wolverine off and draw him out. And they just ditch his power of kinetic energy absorption, instead giving him some incredibly generic enhanced agility and reflexes, making him a master marksman who can jump around. And now, on a related note, we move down to 12 with Bolt. In the movies, Chris Bradley was also a member of the covert Black Ops mutant group run by William Stryker in the 70s. He used his ability to control electronics to pilot the team's aircraft and manipulate the power of the facilities that they entered and other electronic devices. When Wolverine refused to allow the team to kill innocent villagers, he left, and soon after the team fell apart, including Bradley. Years later, we see him working at a carnival, using his abilities to perform tricks and con people. And then Sabretooth shows up and kills him, so Stryker can harvest his abilities yeah, we'll get to that on the villain list, believe you me. Anywho, virtually all of that is just completely made up for this movie. In the comics, he doesn't have the ability to control electronics. Instead, he has your standard electricity powers, able to control and manipulate electricity in both offensive and defensive ways. Though when his power first manifested, it was very dangerous and uncontrolled, before he was enrolled in the Xavier Institute to learn to control them. Later on, after contracting the deadly legacy virus, he was eventually saved by the mutant mercenary known at the time as Maverick. Chris became inspired by Maverick to use his powers as a hero and became known as Bolt, joining the team of young heroes, the New Warriors. And later on, when Maverick was believed to have been killed, Chris took up the costumed identity himself to honor his lost mentor. However, that did not go so well, as during a mission to go undercover with the organization Gene Nation as they were planning a bombing, the original Maverick resurfaced, now going by the identity of, you guessed it, Agent Zero. In the chaos, Agent Zero tragically killed Chris, thinking he was part of the organization and that he was drawing a gun to shoot him. Chris died not knowing his own mentor had killed him, but Agent Zero removed his mask and saw his identity, now forced to carry that guilt with him. So what's similar between these two versions of the character? Well, kinda electricity, and they both know an Agent Zero's, though in the comics they share a bond, while in the movies they're just basically co-workers. So it seems like they found him while reading up on Maverick, and seeing he'd taken the identity, they decided to toss him in because they saw the word electricity and thought it'd be cool. And I have to ask, if they did that, why not have Agent Zero kill Bolt instead of Sabretooth? Then they'd at least have jumped up on the list a bit for that little bit, but oh no, they needed Sabretooth to appear to have gone rogue for their stupid twist plot, yeah. And now down to 11 with Angel Dust. Angel Dust is not a very big character in comics. She was a young girl who left her home when her mutant powers emerged out of fear that her family wouldn't accept her. She joined a faction of the Morlocks living in the sewers of Chicago. Alongside other members of that group, she helped fight against corrupt police and sentinels, and eventually returned home and learned to her surprise that her family actually did accept her mutant nature. She has the power to increase her adrenal levels to the point where she can gain superhuman strength and stamina, though extended use of these powers exhausts her. In the movies, they thought the names and powers were cool, so they harvested those parts of her like they were Stryker and left the rest discarded in the sewers. In the movies, Angel Dust did not gain her powers naturally. She was part of an experiment conducted by the workshop to activate the Dorman X gene in individuals' DNA. After gaining her abilities, she started working as the main enforcer for the program's director, putting her into conflict with Deadpool and later Colossus. Though in the comics she's a normal girl who cares about others, in the movies she's a sadistic and unempathetic bully. In my opinion, the morality of a character is usually one of the most egregious things to change about them, But I'm not going to sit here and seriously complain about how they changed a character who only appeared in a handful of issues and actually doesn't really live up to the power gimmick and name as well as the movie version does. So, moving on, these are starting to get nothing similar, and it's only downhill from here, because we're now entering the top 10 worst adapted Fox X-Men heroes, starting with Arty. In the comics, Arty is a very young mutant with a mutation that drastically affects his appearance, giving him an enlarged, misshapen head, bulging white eyes, and pinkish skin. He is also mute, but has the ability to project his thoughts and the thoughts of others as holograms, often using this power to communicate with other people. His father was a scientist and dedicated his abilities to trying to cure his son's appearance, going to such drastic measures as having Beast kidnapped to enlist his help. Things went south very badly, and before he was killed, he asked X-Factor to look after his son. During Arty's time with X-Factor, he used his abilities to aid them, and met and formed a close friendship with other young mutants, including one who became his closest friend, Leech. He's learned and trained alongside other young mutants across many teams through the years since. In the movies, he's just that kid who sticks out that forked tongue in X-Men 2, and then is among the kids kidnapped and then later rescued. He looks completely normal, except for that tongue, which is a drastic difference. Besides being a young mutant who learns under other mutants, there's really no similarity whatsoever. They could have called this kid anything. At 9, we have Psylock. Like Emma Frost, Psylock is an incredibly popular character they completely effed up the first time, pissing off fans, so they tried a second time, and though visually closer, they still managed to piss off fans. In the movie, she's a member of the Omegas, a group of outcast mutants similar to the Morlocks in comics. Psylock and the Omegas join alongside the Brotherhood of Mutants to oppose the newly created mutant cure. She has the power of shadow teleportation and uses it to help take Warren Worthington II captive and attempt to kill him before he's saved by his son. And when the island the cure was developed on starts to be completely obliterated by the Phoenix, she's atomized as she tries to escape the chaos. Now, if there's one character I do not want to try to explain the incredibly convoluted continuity of in a paragraph, it's frickin' Psylock. So, here's a very, very abridged rundown. Psylock was originally Betsy Braddock, the sister of Captain Britain, who had psychic abilities. Eventually, she met and used her abilities to aid the X-Men, before she was eventually kidnapped by the crime lord Matsuo Shuriyaba, in the hopes he could use her psychic abilities to revive his comatose love, the ninja assassin Quanin. But they wound up switching bodies instead, and Betsy, in Quanin's body, was brainwashed into becoming an assassin herself. However, she was freed from this brainwashing and returned to fighting alongside the X-Men, now gaining the abilities of a lifetime of training as a ninja assassin that her new body had as well. This is all a lot more complicated than that, but just go with me. Though the body exchange had diminished her psychic abilities, she learned how to focus them into a psychic knife that can be plunged into opponents, casting mental damage or disrupting their nervous system. And later on, after being mortally wounded, a liquid from another dimension was used to heal her that gave her access to even more abilities, including shadow-based ones, though she lost access to most of her psychic abilities as well. Also way more complicated, but let's just go with it. I get that they didn't want to translate all of this nonsensical comic continuity into one character for a movie, but at the absolute most simplified, Psylock is a badass ninja chick with a glowing psychic knife who fights with the X-Men. And this movie instead adapted her as a goth punk with shadow powers who fights with the damn Brotherhood. Oh, God. All right, there can't be more, right? That was barely similar at all. What, we're only at 8? Oh, my God. All right, well, next up we have Spike. Spike is an interesting one because the comic version is actually a loose adaptation of the Spike with a Y originally created for the X-Men Evolution show. It's always interesting when someone originates outside the comics, then is adapted into the comics, and then is adapted back out again. However, in the movies, they did such a crappy job that it removes all parts of what usually make this thing kind of interesting to me. In X-Men Evolution, Spike was Evan Daniels, a high schooler and mutant with the ability to project spikes from his body. He's Storm's nephew, and she recruits him into the younger team of X-Men in that show. In the comics, they loosely, and I mean loosely, adapted this character in as Darian Elliott. This Spike, with an I, was a mutant recruited into the troubled team X-Statix, who often clashes with other members of the team due to his arrogant and abrasive personality. And like many X-Statix members, he eventually died on mission. While the show version's bone growths could be used in a variety of ways, including as armor, the comic versions usually manifested as pointy protrusions used as projectiles. This was the version the movie adapted, but that's all they adapted. The movie Spike is just a member of the Brotherhood who tosses spikes at Wolverine while he infiltrates the camp and is quickly killed. And that's it, so moving on. Next up, down to 7 with Firefist. Rusty Collins was a young mutant who accidentally burned a woman when his mutant ability to generate and control fire first manifested near the naval base he served at. He was imprisoned by the Navy, and when his superior threatened to kill Rusty, his abilities ignited again, and he inadvertently set much of the naval base ablaze. He then fled and was found and taken in by X-Factor to help him learn and train to control his abilities, alongside other young mutants. He trained with and aided X-Factor and gained control of those powers, but eventually decided to turn himself into the authorities, who were still pursuing him for the burnings and fleeing his post. But instead of receiving a fair trial, they decided to make him an example to mutants everywhere and locked him up. After being freed by some of the other young mutants he trained with, they started their own team called the Exterminators. Eventually, he and other mutants were captured and brainwashed by the terroristic Mutant Liberation Front, before being free to their mind control by Magneto. In gratitude to Magneto, Rusty became a member of his acolytes, but soon after regretted his decision. But before he could leave the group, the body of an alternate timeline Horseman of Apocalypse known as Holocaust was recovered by the group and brought onto their space station, who then revived and brutally killed multiple acolytes, including Rusty. In the movies, he has fire powers and is named Russell Collins, and the rest is completely different. In the present day, Russell is a young mutant who lashes out in public with his pyrokinetic powers due to the tortures he's suffered at the mutant rehabilitation center he's grown up in. In the future, he's a psychotic mass murderer who enjoys killing people and causing destruction with his powers. He's faced off against Cable multiple times before eventually Russell tracks Cable's family down and murders all of them. Cable travels back in time to murder Russell in the present day, but is opposed by Deadpool, who had formed a sort of bond with the boy and doesn't believe that he deserves to die before he's become the man he's destined to become in the future. Eventually, Deadpool stops Russell from killing the headmaster of the Mutant Rehabilitation Center, the first kill that would have led him to learning to enjoy it. And when Russell sees Deadpool sacrifice his own life to save his entire life outlook changes, changing the direction of his life and saving Cable's family in the future. Interesting story, I liked it and all, but this is an original character in an original story. What makes him Firefist instead of someone like Pyro, Sunflower Match, Firestorm, or other mutants with fire-related abilities? His personality, backstory, and motivations are completely different. He's got a New Zealand accent for some reason, and he is in far less physically capable shape than the comic version. Really, he's got about as much in common as any of the other characters. One of the only similarities I can think of is, yes, he was imprisoned, and that Cable did try to kill him once when he was a brainwashed member of the MLF, but other than that, assumedly, they just wanted a guy with fire powers, so grabbed the name out of the firepower characters we have the rights to hat. Now moving down to 6 with Cecilia Reyes. In the comics, Cecilia put herself through medical school despite her poor background due to her desire to help people. When she was approached by Charles Xavier during her internship to come to the Xavier Institute and learn to train her mutant ability to create force fields, she declined the offer, wishing to continue in her path to become a trauma surgeon. After achieving her goal, she could not escape her status as a mutant and was drawn into the world of mutant hatred in the X-Men time and again, and has used both her mutant and medical abilities to aid the team and the innocents they protect. And though she spent long amounts of time with the X-Men and other heroes facing against threats, she always returns to medicine as her primary form of helping people. She's a good-natured and altruistic hero who would never, and I mean never, forcibly lock up a bunch of psychologically troubled teens, conduct intrusive genetic experiments on them, and use their greatest fears and traumas to manipulate them on the orders of an organization dedicated to militarizing mutations for profit. However, in New Mutants, that is how they decided to adapt this character. She's the seemingly only doctor and overseer of the Milbury Hospital, a faculty that claimed to be helping rehabilitate young mutants who've had trouble with their powers, but was secretly a front to detain those mutants and research their powers and psychological state to either recruit them as soldiers and assassins or kill them and try to harvest their DNA. Both of which Cecilia was very willing to do when ordered to by her employers without any hesitation. She lies to the young mutants she's trapped with her force field abilities, that she is trying to help them learn how to control their abilities, and that when they're rehabilitated, they'll be allowed back into society. She looks nothing similar, she acts nothing similar. One version's good while the other is straight up evil. I'm not really sure why they even grabbed her, besides liking force field power for trapping everyone. Honestly, you cannot get much worse as an adaptation than this, and yet somehow, this list isn't over. Because now we enter the top 5 most poorly adapted Fox X-Men heroes, starting with Fat. Fat was Billy Bob Riley, who grew up poor in a trailer park. He thought that his sudden weight gains were due to his poor lifestyle and stressful life. When he learned he was a mutant with the ability to manipulate the fat deposits in his body, allowing him to increase the mass of parts of his body at will, he trained his abilities and began using them to fight crime as a superhero, before being recruited into the team later known as X-Statix, but then using the name X-Force. Due to his good looks when not using his powers and the team's cultivated publicity, Fat became a famous celebrity mutant superhero and became very wealthy, though he did have reservations about the way the team operated sometimes. And later, he died on a mission, sacrificing himself to save his teammates. Who was he in the movies? Well, he's this big guy at the mutant meeting about the cure in X-Men 3. He walks up to a spot too small for him to sit down, and then he gets suddenly much thinner and is able to sit down. Ho ho ho! Comedy at its finest. And that's it. They just liked the power for this incredibly stupid visual gag, and so they tossed him in there. Well, I mean, technically he does appear again in a deleted scene where Iceman freezes him, and then Colossus brutally and unnecessarily just murders him. Just a quick side note, for all this movie's flaws, I'm very thankful they removed all those scenes where the X-Men were just horribly murdering the mutants attacking the cure facility. And I'm not saying that this guy is the character Fat because he has similar powers or kinda looks like him. He's specifically credited as Fat in the credits, even though besides the basic idea of the power, there are no similarities, and most other mutants are just credited as mutant. And now at 4, we reach one I'm sure a lot of you have been waiting for, Nega Sonic Teenage Warhead. In the movies, Nega Sonic Teenage Warhead is a mutant who serves with the incredibly small team of X-Men in the Deadpool movies. Her and Colossus show up to deal with Deadpool. While Colossus tries to convince Deadpool to use his powers for good, Nega Sonic is more antisocial and sarcastic. Though she's a bit snarky and rude, she is respectful of Colossus when he brings her on missions, and forms a respect and friendship with Deadpool later on. Her powers are basically what you'd expect from her name, with the ability to generate explosions of energy from her body that she can manipulate in a variety of ways, including propelling herself through the air, creating force fields, and striking opponents with explosive force. Now, besides the name, and being a mutant, not a single sentence of what I just said is from the comics in any way whatsoever. In the comics, Nega Sonic Teenage Warhead was a young mutant living on the mutant island of Genosha who was a student of Emma Frost's. She had precognitive abilities and told Emma she had foreseen the island's destruction and the death of everyone on it. And in the second issue she appears in, she's dead, after gigantic sentinels had destroyed Genosha and slaughtered 16 million mutants, including her. We see Emma Frost emerging from the wreckage, carrying her lifeless body. And that's it. We see her again as a subconscious illusion from Emma's mind later on, but that wasn't actually her. She died almost as soon as she appeared. The people making Deadpool just saw the name and thought it was cool, not realizing that the name had been taken from a song the writer of the comics had thought was cool, showing just how little research the people making these movies even do on the characters they're adapting. But to be fair, Nega Sonic has proven a very popular character who's appeared in multiple movies, so sometimes completely disregarding or even doing any research whatsoever on the characters you're adapting, I guess can be the right call. And somehow, with even that level of dissimilarity to the source material, we're still going down. Now entering the top 3 most poorly adapted Fox X-Men heroes, starting with Pete Wisdom. In the comics, Pete Wisdom is a secret agent working with the British organization Black Air, with the mutant ability to absorb solar energy and release that energy in a variety of ways, such as creating thermal blades. He's sent alongside the British team Excalibur to investigate the mutant island of Genosha, and while doing so, gets close to and forms a relationship with Kitty Pryde, who invites him to join the team. His somewhat roguish personality makes other members of the team worry about Kitty being hurt in the end, especially her pet dragon Lockheed. Wisdom learns of some of the more nefarious things Black Air was involved in, eventually leaving Excalibur and Kitty and using his skills to dedicate himself to policing all Black Ops organizations and becomes the leader of a newly formed X-Force. Though, later he returned to working alongside the British government against all manner of bizarre and dangerous threats. So, how did the movies adapt this badass guy? Right here. He's Peter from Deadpool 2. Just a seemingly totally regular and average guy with no mutant abilities who responds to Deadpool's ad to join X-Force because he thought it sounded fun. Now, originally I wasn't going to include him on this list. In the movie, we never actually hear his last name. I'm sure they were just looking through names of characters associated with X-Force, and since the movie's version of and build-up to X-Force was just a big joke and parody of superhero teams in movies, they saw a character named Peter on the list and thought it'd be funny to have a totally regular guy just join the team. So, though he was obviously the inspiration, I did not ever consider him an actual adaptation of the character Pete Wisdom. Until I saw Hugh frickin' Jackman call the character Peter Wisdom in an official promotional video he did with Ryan Reynolds, forcing me to put him on this list, much to my own annoyance. And though I don't count characters from Deadpool and Wolverine on this list since it was not made under Fox, we do learn that in that movie, every Deadpool has a Peter, meaning that this character has the potential to be at the bottom of worst adapted character lists all across the multiverse. And there we have it. The top 20 were... Wait, what? We're not done? There's still 2 more? How can that be physically possible? They adapted a badass British secret agent mutant into just some random guy. All right. Let's see here. And number 2, we have YuGiOh. Again. I already recapped YuGiOh up at 18. She's a ninja mercenary, teams up with Wolverine from time to time, yada yada yada. You remember, right? We already saw how they adapted that YuGiOh in the Wolverine. When else did they adapt her? Why is it a different character? Oh, there. Hi, YuGiOh. She's a member of the X-Men and Nega Sonic's girlfriend, contrasting her quiet, apathetic personality with a cheery, upbeat one. She has the power to manipulate electricity that she charges through a chain in combat. She is, nothing like the YuGiOh in comics, and that one isn't even a mutant. And that's really because she's not that character. She's a totally different character from the comics named Surge. Surge is a teenage mutant named Noriko who fights alongside other young mutants in the new X-Men. She absorbs electricity and channels it into gauntlets she wears. A young mutant member of the X-Men and Xavier Institute with dyed hair and electrical powers she channels into external weapons? That's 100 times more accurate than anyone else on this list, regardless of her real name and personality. But we know for a fact that this is not a version of Surge with a different name, even though it clearly is. And we know this isn't just a coincidence with no connection to the other unrelated comic character named Yukio. No, when specifically asked if this character was supposed to be or was in some way inspired by Surge, the writers of this movie responded with, "That's not right. She's a super minor character. The character's name is actually Yukio, an assassin, but who's an adult assassin? So we just aged her down. She's such a minor character, we thought we could pretty much get away with anything." Yeah, I call BS on that. My guess is they created the character as Surge when writing it, but some corporate suit popped in and said something about rights or payments to creators, so they just swapped her name for another random-ass Japanese X-Men character without even realizing that that character had already been used. I have no evidence for this whatsoever, it's just my own conjecture. And Yukio ain't even really that obscure of a character in the first place, man. She's part of one of the most well-known and famous Wolverine arcs of all time. My God, this one drives me insane. Just call her Surge, and she would have just been high enough to stay off this damn list. Yeah. All right, calm down. Anyways, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we still have one more hero to go after a guy whose only similarity is he wears a button-up shirt, and a character whose literally only similarity is being Asian. At the number one most poorly adapted Fox X-Men hero, we have Vindicator. In the comics, Heather Hudson was the wife of James Hudson, a man who developed an advanced suit to be used for geological exploration. When he realized the company he worked for would use and sell the suit for military purposes, he stole it. After approaching the Canadian government for aid, James donned the suit himself and became the hero Guardian and founded and became leader of the Canadian superhero team, Alpha Flight. However, after her husband seemingly died, Heather led the team in a non-combat capacity, until she later gained a similar suit of her own, and after being trained by Wolverine became known as Vindicator, hoping to honor her husband's heroism. But eventually she learned that her husband James was still alive, and the two were able to fight side by side. Alright, what was Heather Hudson's role in the movies? Well, she was this old lady from Wolverine Origins. Her and her husband find Wolverine in their barn after he escapes from the facility where he'd had adamantium bonded to his bones. They take him in, clothe him, and give him a meal before being shot dead by Agent Zero as he hunts Wolverine down. Why is this random old lady who gets immediately killed off named after a primary member of Alpha Flight? I do not know, but I've got a better question. If she is, then why isn't her husband also named after a husband in the comics? In the comics, his name is James, but in the movie, her husband's name is randomly Travis. If this was supposed to be a reference to Alpha Flight, or to the time in comics these two had actually met Wolverine before he'd become the hero he does later on, wouldn't they have been named Heather and James, not Heather and frickin' Travis? And what's weirder is her maiden name was McNeil. The last name Hudson was from her husband, yet he's the one who gets replaced, even though she doesn't do that much and he's the one who has the bond with Wolverine? Usually I can see why they make these choices they make in these movies, no matter how bad, bizarre, or stupid, but this one, I have no guess. Besides being Canadian and having met Wolverine, that second trait shared by nearly every single Marvel character in existence, this character shares nothing in common with her comic version, and is not only the worst hero adaptation in Fox's X-Men universe, but one of the absolute worst and most random adaptations I've ever covered. And, there we go. Damn, man, I thought some of the MCU adaptations were bad, but it felt like we were at the bottom of those lists right out of the gate with this one. So there's the heroes, but the villains ain't gonna be much better. I look forward to getting that list out to you. There's some weird ones on there. And while the X-Men movies had a bad habit of just grabbing up powers that they thought were cool, completely ignoring the beloved and popular characters those powers were attached to, there were still actually a lot of pretty damn well-adapted heroes in this universe as well. I look forward to getting to do that list for you too. Now before we part, use your newly awakened power to click buttons beneath YouTube videos to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so that you do not miss out on those videos when they come out. And I'll see you then. I've got a whole long list already, but if there's another franchise you'd like to see a video like this of, let me know below and I'll add it to that list and get to it as soon as I can. Cause, like Wolverine says, I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do isn't very useful or respected.